Hi, everybody, welcome back. So, this is episode 17 of Call to the Bar podcast, and I am joined with Nick Ayres, who is a CILEX lawyer. And I'm not going to even go into saying the what the it stands for. I think it's like chartered, but I'll let Nick do that.
Oh,
Um,
thanks.
I'm sorry, I'm putting the blame on you there. With high rights of audience as well, allowing Nick to appear in criminal proceedings in the Crown Court and magistrates as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, and magistrates as well. So Nick, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. I'm so happy. I've been waiting to get a solicitor on, and I'm so pleased to have you on here as well. You are from VCW Law,
VCW. Yeah, in
yeah,
Stockton.
in Stockton, and you've done this job for many, many, many years. So
Yeah.
you understand the criminal proceedings like the back of your hand and the criminal justice system. So I'm sure this is going to be very insightful and exciting podcast. So if I've introduced you correctly,
Yes.
let's start. So
Yeah.
Nick, you did the Silex path, and I know a little bit about the Silex path. Could you talk to the audience a little bit about what that entailed, how challenging it was, just what it is in general?
But sorry, it just went off there, Ellie. Sorry, what was that
Oh,
again?
the Silex route. So just talking about
Yeah.
what that is
So,
exactly.
so basically, SILEX Chartered Institute of Legal Executives is what it stands for. And what happened was I started, crikey, back in 2001 as office junior at my old firm. Started to go to the Crown Court to watch cases evolve there behind counsel taking notes, and then progressed to undertaking the police station accreditation scheme, which allows you to advise people at the police interviews. And then from there on, I completed my law degree at night school, and it was a question of whether or not you go down the route of a training contract, which is expensive, or whether or not you could go down the Silex route, which is a cheaper alternative, but still as intense. Because I had a law degree, it meant that I passed a couple of levels, as in like the foundation level, etc. And it then entailed completing portfolios, examinations. And when you became a Silex practitioner, you then have to take an advocacy course. So I had to go to, I think it was Chelmsford for that, for a week's course. And then eventually you become qualified as an advocate. Um, then from there on, you undertake the duty solicitor scheme, which I did. And then in September of last year, SILEX started through the College of Law, allowing SILEX members to undertake their high rights of audience, which allows you to practice at the Crown Court. And then I completed that and became the first criminal SILEX practitioner to hold high rights in the country.
That is unbelievable. Congratulations. Wow, that is absolutely phenomenal.
Thanks.
So the pressure, the pressure is on. So in terms of that achievement then, I mean, how did that feel like for you?
Unbelievable, because I, well, as I say, I made the tea. I went out and got the birthday cakes when I first started out. So
Yeah.
I come from a working class background, if you like. Mum and dad both worked.
Yeah.
So it was nice to be not only the first person, I think, probably in our family to go to university, but the first person to achieve this qualification in the country is just, phenomenal, really.
I think that there's so much to take from that achievement in itself, like for those who are starting off in, paralegals at the firms, and this is something that we're going to get onto in due course in the podcast. Like, there's so many roles that are just as imperative. They're kind of like in terms of procedures, paralegals are just as important throughout the case as solicitors are and barristers are, and it's like that remembering, isn't it? You can start from essentially doing, the little work to becoming something really
Well,
big.
you start from the bottom, and I think by doing it that way, you appreciate absolutely everything, because you know everybody has a role to play in a criminal case, from photocopying jury bundles to conducting the case in front of a jury or a magistrate or whatever. Everybody has a role to play, and I think that sometimes gets forgotten by people who have been a bit more fortunate and have just gone straight into being a barrister or being a solicitor, whereas they might not have worked from the bottom upwards.
Yeah, and also the experience you will have learnt from seeing all like those different stages and having a hand in all of those different stages must be quite, you
Oh,
know.
absolutely. You know, no 2 days are the same now. So we could go to the police station and represent somebody for theft of a bag of crisps, and then tomorrow it could be representing somebody for a murder.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about the job.
Absolutely. In terms of the police station accreditation that you managed to undertake and obtained, in terms of then going to the police station and having that initial first advice with the client, how important would you say that that is in a trial in a due course if it goes into a trial?
Well, having undertaken it and speaking to King's Counsel, formerly Queen's Counsel, I won't name drop anybody or anything like that. They can remain nameless. Who often said to me that they wouldn't like to advise somebody at the police station because it's the most crucial role in the whole process because you are stuck with whatever you say in that first interview. There's
Yeah.
no getting away from it.
No.
You can't say, oh well, what I actually meant was this.
Yeah.
You're tied with it, you're stuck with it. So if you don't get that right and your advice isn't right there, then you're snookered for the rest of the case.
Absolutely. And, even just the opportunity then for them to be cross-examined, isn't it, by the prosecution if they've said something different in like chief compared to what they've said in their interview. So yeah, you are right. It's like well, it's kind of like the make it or break it part, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
So in terms of how obviously I know every case is different per like part every case by case is so different. So you
yeah.
can't really give overall advice, I'm guessing, on just a random scenario. But for example, when you go to the police station and you are preparing your advice, what type of things are you thinking about?
Well, how I was always taught by my former boss was that and how I always look at it now is that what's your advice now and how's it going to look at the end of the case or when it goes in front of a jury or a magistrate? What does that look like? And how does that stand the client in the best stead? Because it's quite easy to advise somebody to say nothing, but then they've got to explain later on down the line why they've said nothing.
Yeah,
If they have a defence, in my opinion, you put it forward no matter what the offence is, because as I say, that's the whole point of the police caution. You don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence. And in years gone by, the first question that can be asked of a defendant by a prosecutor is, well, why didn't you say any of this in your interview?
mm,
You're just saying this now. Because you've got to appreciate that obviously the first stage, the interview process, when they give their account, that's fresh. Whereas as the case progresses later on down the line, they've had time to tailor their account to fit the evidence, if you like. And that's why that question is so important from a prosecution point of view. Why are you just saying this now? Because there's no answer for it.
yeah, of course. So my next question is now that you have got your high rights of audience and you're an advocate and you can appear in the Crown Court, and also from your experience of watching jury trials and watching different levels and seeing, well, different seniority of barristers conduct these jury trials, what do you think the hardest part of a jury trial is? Do you think it's the closing, like if you, from a defense point of view, is it the cross-examination skills? Like what type of advocacy would you think is most important when you're in those trials?
So in a trial process, you have to stay on script, I suppose. Is my advice is that you don't ask a question that you don't know the answer to, because if you do
What do
that,
you
you're
say
hostage.
that? I did that in my first ever week of examination in chief, and I
Yeah.
swear the response I got off Matt, she's fantastic, my teacher, was don't ever do that again.
Yeah,
That was a very dangerous line of question, and I completely understood why, because
yeah,
that witness could have said anything to me.
absolutely. And that, but I mean, if a case is going badly, I suppose, well, what have you got to lose?
Yeah, true.
You know, but hopefully, when it's a trial, it shouldn't be going badly. And if you stay on script, then you should be all right.
And what's your thoughts of examination in chief? Do you back the like the ongoing rumor that it is one of the hardest skills to master? Because I personally think it is, from my experience so far.
Yeah, I think that and we just had a conversation about this today in the solicitors' room. I think that that less is more. If you can get your defendant in and out of the witness box
Quick.
as quick as you can and get all the information out, it's a lot better because all that can happen is the longer they go in there, the worse it gets.
Yeah, that's so true. When you look at preparing your examination chief, for example, and I know it's difficult because you can't really prepare a script, but you can perhaps do a bullet point. And I know different advocates have got different styles of doing it. So some people I've spoke to will put a bullet point of the evidence that they want to get out and then various different questions aside. I've tried that, it doesn't work for me. For
Yeah.
some reason, I just can't get behind that method. But what would your advice be to young aspiring lawyers, barristers, advocates for doing examination chief? How do you pull that information out to then ask the correct questions that are not leading?
Well, I think that if you have almost a bit of a pro forma of questions that you want to ask, and they're not a script as such, but then you can develop it from there and almost walk them through it. And it is just a case of looking at their interview or their proof of evidence if they've given you it when you're defending and saying, okay, so what happened next? And then what happened?
Yeah.
Okay, so why did that happen? What? And it's not leading. It's literally just trying to tell a story, but it's their story, and you already know how it should come out.
Yeah. So you want it to come out as authentic as possible. So
Of course, it
yeah,
shouldn't be forced. It shouldn't be robotic. It's got to be fluid because that's the whole point. You are telling a story about what happened on that day from the defendant's point of view. And I know I keep saying the defendant because I only defend.
defense, yeah, of course. Sorry. Yeah, yeah. So then on the flip side, when you cross-examining, say, for example, a complainant,
Yeah,
what do you think is like really imperative throughout that cross-examination? Over in a case, of course, it's going to be case by case, is so different. So, for example, if you've got the inconsistencies, yeah, of course, you're going to want to draw
yeah,
on those.
yeah.
But what else would you say is the whole crux of the cross-examination when you get into that zone?
I suppose don't argue. It's always a good one. Just and if you can, be as nice as you can with them because you'll get a lot more out of a witness if you're nicer to them rather than you start barking. But if they start arguing again, you just got to remain calm
Yeah.
because it looks worse from for them if they're shouting and bawling at somebody who's only asking them questions. What would they be like if they were in a fight or it was something like that? How would they then react? So it doesn't come across well if you start arguing back.
When would be the point where you would ask for like judicial intervention if a witness is being really difficult?
I think I generally just stop asking questions and just wait
Yeah,
and then allow them to sort
calm
of
down.
pause themselves a little bit. And I might even ask, a question like, right, have you finished now? Should we carry on with the questions?
Yeah. Just
Sort
to
of
bring it back.
thing. And sort of put it back on them, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Rather than getting into like a
Yeah,
debate.
slagging match.
Yeah, it's not great.
No.
So, in terms of when you're preparing for a case, then, so of course, there's going to be well, every case is just as important, of course, but
Yeah,
say, for example, you've got the lower level things,
yeah,
um, to the very, very, the high stuff, so like the murders, the attempted murders, the rapes, things like that. When you're preparing a case to go ahead for trial,
yeah,
what do you like? I mean, it can go on for years now because of the backlog, of course.
yeah.
But what is your like? What do you need to get in what ducks do you need to get in a row essentially when you
What
are preparing this?
if you're preparing a case for counsel for a trial, for argument's sake,
Yes, yeah,
we're quite lucky and quite fortunate in Teesside that the barristers that we use there's a massive pool to select from, but you generally use the same ones, so you know how they work. So they'll want a proof of evidence, they'll want a conference with the client, they'll then draft a defence statement, and then if there's another conference required, then we can do that.
yeah.
And that's how you sort of and that's just a sort of repetitive thing that we've done for many many years.
Yeah, of course. And in terms of the barrister, then, when you are instructing a barrister,
Yeah.
what do you think, and this can be advice as well for upcoming barristers, maybe pupils as well, even juniors, what would you say to them is very important for them to be able to understand the case? Because everybody says to aspiring lawyers, preparation is key and knowing your case is the most important thing. So what would you say to those upcoming, lawyers who are going to go into preparing a case?
I think that it's about horses for courses when it comes to barristers, because if you wanted to, you could pick the same barrister day in day out for every single case, but it doesn't work. And as long as you've got a sort of you're approachable, then you'll get instructed.
Yeah,
As silly as that sounds, and as daft as that sounds, if somebody was not approachable, then I would think, right, okay, well, I'm not going to instruct you then. Because if
yeah.
I can't get on with you, what's the chance that you're going to get on with the client who's worried, argumentative, angry? How are you going to help him if you can't even speak to somebody who's hopefully on your level?
Yeah, of course. So in terms of like for their preparation, for the barrister's preparation as well, like working with solicitors, keeping in communication, what do you think is one thing that sometimes you've seen in experience where you think the barrister shouldn't have done that? So for example, maybe not doing as many conferences with the clients, like what do you think can really impact a trial if a barrister doesn't really engage that well?
I think that the problem is that if it's all about preparation,
Yeah,
preparation, and as long as you are prepared, then again, as daft as it sounds, and there's no sort of curveballs.
yeah, of course. If you
But if you're
don't,
not prepared, then obviously something can come out because you might, excuse me, either missed it or not read it or not thought about it. So preparation is absolute paramount.
yeah, and knowing the case
Yeah,
and communicating with the solicitors and things.
yeah.
Um, In terms of the defendant, then, from the defendant's perspective, what do they look for and seek in their solicitor and in their barrister? What is it that they want? Do they want the constant communication? And I know sometimes that can be unreasonable and difficult if they want to be on the phone every 2 minutes. But of course, like what do you need to provide to a defendant when you are working on their case?
You need to listen to them.
Yeah,
And that's what sometimes they just want to. I always say, look, rather than you worrying about a question which might or something that yeah, give me a text, give me a call because I might be able to answer it in 2 seconds, and when you're worrying about it for 5 months. So they just want someone to be there to listen to them and hear them out, and some are more demanding than others. And but that's just how it goes, really.
yeah, of course. And so, in terms of your journey, then, when did you know you wanted to go into the law? Like, was it from a very young age, or when was
Didn't
it?
I didn't I from when I was really young, I want to be a dentist for some reason. I have no idea why. I then went to college. I had no idea what I wanted to do at college. So I did business studies for about 3 weeks, and then got an apprenticeship as like an office temp, if you like, an admin role. And then or my mum rather, saw an advert. I was on holiday. Saw an advert for an office junior with Brown Beaver and Co. as they were then. She sent my CV off, applied for it, went with it. I just sort of fell into it really.
Wow.
It just sort
They
of
do say like the law is a calling though, don't they? Like I don't know how many people I've heard say that, and I think it's very true because it's a vocation, isn't it? You take it on
it just progressed.
for life. Yeah.
As I moved through, I was always interested in reading the cases because they are really interesting every single case. But it's sort of I just sort of fell into the next role and fell into the next role as I progressed, and I've been really fortunate. I've been really lucky. But in terms of did I ever want to go in the law, the short answer is no,
Oh,
because I
mhm.
didn't know what I wanted to do because so many people don't know what they want to do when they leave school.
Yeah. So in terms of normal life experiences you've got then, what type of skills do you think are imperative to a career in law? So what type of transferable skills are imperative when you're working in the law?
I think you need to be patient.
Yeah.
You need to be understanding to a degree.
Hmm.
You need to keep a bit of a level head because at the end of the day, you're giving advice. And my line with for a lot of clients is, well, look, it's my advice, take it or leave it, but it's based on, X amount of years advising clients. So I'd like to think I know what I'm talking about. But if you want to have a trial rather than pleading guilty, because I think you'll be found guilty, then we can have a trial. I'll still give you my best shot for you, but I think I know what the outcome's going to be.
Yeah. So it's just about being honest, isn't it? And it's
Yeah.
just like having the level of respect to say to the client, this is,
So there's no point in trying to sugarcoat things either, because you can make things as airy and fairy as you like. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if you say to a client, I think you're going to get off, and he doesn't, well, he's not going to be happy, is he?
no,
So it is about not
professional
sugarcoating.
negligence.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
it's,
it's not
it
great.
is about being honest with them, and if it looks grim, then tell them, look, this looks bad.
Yeah.
But if he says they haven't done it, well, then you've got to go with that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. So in terms of advice you've got for upcoming barristers, say for example, pupil barristers,
Yeah.
say they're going into the second six and then even up to junior tenant, say 3, 4 years call, what would be your biggest advice for them?
That no case is too small
Yeah.
because when it comes to it, you can't turn your nose up because at the end of the day, it pays the bills for one. But secondly, it shows that if council will pick up something which looks, like they might not be interested in it for argument's sake, But that solicitor who's instructing, you'll think, oh, well, actually, he did that case, which wasn't great. So why don't we give him or her the next case up? And they've done a good job on that one. So let's give them the next one. And then before you know it, you've progressed to being flavour of the month and having a steady flow of work for the rest of your career. So my
And
advice would be don't turn your nose up at anything.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for that. And in terms of where you've just said there, they've done him or her have done a good job on that previous case. What are you looking for in a barrister to kind of amount to them doing a good job, other than obviously the obvious, if getting the correct verdict,
Yeah,
if it's
yeah,
trial
well, obviously, correct result is fantastic, but preparation.
preparation?
Because as a solicitor, you don't want to have to be chasing people round because it's almost you've given them the case, you're entrusting them with it. Now, if they ask you to do something, then you do it, and it's a sort of a two-way street, really.
Yeah. So you both have that working relationship, open
Yeah, of course.
communication. Yeah, of
Yeah,
course. So yeah, and what you've just said there about how no case is too small, everybody says, especially senior barristers that I've spoken to, they always say you cut your teeth in the magistrates, you cut your teeth in the
mostly.
magistrates, and everybody says that I hosted Paul Abrahams from Park Square
Yeah,
a couple of months ago, and that was Paul's biggest piece of advice. He was like, "You will learn the most in the magistrates," and
yeah.
do you think that is also correct?
Well, at the magistrates court, you see everything
Yeah,
because it all court-wise, it starts here, but you will get a massive range of different clients, and you will see everything from well, just imagine we can see everything.
yeah, of
It's
course.
crazy.
You're watching it all kind of come up, aren't you?
Yeah, of
And
course you are.
also in terms of the way it's listed there, it's like back-to-back listings, isn't it? They call them
Yeah,
sessions, is that correct? So it's like
yeah.
your sessions. Yeah. So okay, so from a defense point of view then, from a defense advocate point of view, how do you deal with sometimes if you get a bit of a prosecution bias judge?
Um, there's nothing you can do with it.
Yeah,
You
you just
just
have
have
to
to
do your
get on
best
with it.
shot. Yeah.
Just have to get on with it and crack on.
Would you be honest and tell the client that this judge sometimes can be a little bit more on the prosecution side, or
I think when you're in the magistrates court, you can say that. You can say, look, we've got uphill battle here.
yeah,
Because when it's in the magistrates, it's only the judge who's deciding the case, or the magistrates, or the bench. And you can, I will say, look, we've got a fight in our hands here. But no matter how good our case is, we're struggling.
yeah,
And they take it on board. There's nothing else they can do because it's about being honest with them.
yeah. And in terms of the relationship then with the barrister for the Crown in the cases, what's your biggest advice to defence barristers when communicating with the Crown to try and keep it as, you know, fair and even and calm as possible? Because I think so many times when you're, coming up into like becoming a barrister or whatever, and you're in my position, everybody at one point has probably thought in their life the drama between the defence barrister and the Crown barrister, they're like the scrapping, and it's just not that at all.
No.
And often sometimes the defence barrister and the prosecution barrister can come to kind of like an agreement, can't they, on a lesser offence and things like that.
Yeah.
So do you think it's very important to keep that level of open-mindedness and just polite respectfulness as you would with anybody else?
So I think that you probably have to because it's not like it is on TV shows where people argue about anything. And there's some people who do like to argue, there's some people who don't. But as far as I'm concerned, that okay, when you go into court, you've got a job to do. But outside of it, it's you're just normal people.
Of course. Yeah. And it,
And if
like,
you can get on, it's a lot easier.
yeah, of course. It's better for the client as well, I'm guessing, in that sense as well, if it's all working harmoniously. Do you think sometimes the CPS reviewing lawyers, for example, can definitely charge the wrong offence, and would you find that then a case to step in and be like, okay, this is unfair?
Unfortunately, to be fair to the lawyers who are here and prosecutors, their hands are almost tied, so they have to speak to lawyers further up the chain. But they can't always make a decision on what they think is right for the case, which is crazy in itself because they're here doing the case, but they're not allowed to make certain decisions.
And but so when, for example, when you do look at a charging sheet sorry, an indictment, or even if you're in the magazine, you think this is just so unfair, would you, as a defence advocate, step in and maybe say to the prosecution barrister, can you have a word with the reviewing lawyer and
Yeah,
come?
you can always ask. Of
Yeah,
course, if you think there's an alternative or you don't think it's right, you can say, "Oh, there's no evidence." You can say, "Look, can you go and take some instructions on this?" And sometimes they'll say, "Yeah," and come back and it's the right thing. Sometimes they'll
yeah,
come back and say, "No, sorry, we're proceeding."
Yeah, of course. So it just depends on whoever's higher up, kind of, doesn't it?
Of course.
And leads me on to the next question. Obviously, the talk at the moment is the backlog of the courts.
Yeah.
I was having a chat with a friend the other evening, and we were talking about, some of the reasons of the backlogs. I know everybody's got like different opinions and things. And of course, David Lammy is thinking of cutting the jury trials and all the rest of that. Do you think? And we came up with the little idea that perhaps the reason the backlog is so high is because the CPS are making incorrect charging decisions and kind of just bringing cases to court for the sake of it. Would you agree with that? Or
Yeah, there's a lot of cases that probably shouldn't be here.
yeah,
Really minor thefts, and some juveniles shouldn't be coming, but then there's some that should be. It
course.
is really is swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, of course it's a criminal justice system, isn't it? It's like justice has to be seen to be done, but then in the same
Yes.
breath, it's like, where's the line?
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
Have you ever had any experience with joint enterprise in any of your cases?
Yeah, yeah. In both in litigating and in defending since I've been on my feet. Yes, yeah.
And what do you think of that legal doctrine? Do you think that's getting overused by the CPS as well?
Um, in some cases, I think there's a massive stretch, but in others, I can see why it's there. I mean, a case that we had years ago, if I'm able to talk about it, will not name any names, where there was someone was five people, I think it was, were charged with murder, and the driver who we represented drove people to various houses to look for certain people, but he was in fear because everybody in the car, barring apart from him, had a samurai sword.
Yeah.
He never went in the property, he never got out of the car, was convicted of joint enterprise murder.
Yeah. And I was, when I was a criminal appeals paralegal, one of the cases that we were looking to appeal was a really similar situation like that as well.
Yeah,
It was based in London and it was gang affiliations, and it was really
yeah,
tough because what I had definitely saw and observed in my time of being a criminal appeal paralegal was the five murders that we had were all joint enterprise and they were all related to a gang in London. So definitely my experience of joint enterprise in definitely the Southern Circuit, I would say, is like massively overused
yeah.
in terms of like gang narratives and things like that. And what do you think about the crime at the moment then from what you're seeing? Like, is it definitely on the rise in younger in the youths and are you seeing more young defendants coming in than you perhaps you would have saw 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think at the moment, I think youth crime is absolutely through the roof. It's absolutely horrendous how many children, well, they are children, are in for knife crimes and the like. It's so they are at the present time worse than adults,
Mm.
if that can be even possible.
Yeah, of course. So in terms of your career development then, what would you say your biggest challenge has been?
In terms of my career development,
Yeah. And where you are
um,
now?
the most challenging thing, I suppose, was doing a full day's work, then going to night school, then being on call, then getting up and doing a full day's work, then night school again. And so for a period of about 4 years, I was either on nights 1 day a week, potentially on the weekend, and then starting at 9, finishing at 9 because I have to go to university for 2 days of those weeks. That's probably the biggest struggle of it because it's sort of you've got to keep on going because at the end of the day, it's what at the end of the day, basically the rewards there. But it doesn't seem like it when it's 1st of December and you're walking to uni from your car, and it's chucking it down, and you're not getting anything to eat till 10 o'clock, and then going back to work.
Yeah.
Um,
Relentless.
yeah, that's one of the toughest things I think, and um, exams as well because I'm horrendous at exams.
Oh, me too. I had one on Monday. I was like,
Yeah,
oh, Christ. I think it's for me, it's the anticipation of going in the exam just knocks me ill. I'll do all the revision, I'll be fine, but then going into it, I'm like, oh, what if this comes up and what if this comes up? And it's just, ugh, I don't like it. I'd much rather just have like I don't know, an assessment. Um, so in terms of then the difference between the life of a solicitor and the life of a barrister. So of course, barristers like predominantly they're going to be in court, especially criminal barristers are going to be in court
Yeah,
every single day. They're not really going to be in chambers that often unless it's like kind of a commercial set. So in terms of the solicitors, then obviously there's this talk that it's like a 9 till 5 job, it's salaried, and from often a lot of the solicitors I speak to, completely agree that it's not 9 to 5 salaried because it's like you are it's a vocation. You are taking that client's case on personally, and you're going to put the effort in where it's needed and where it's required as well. So that could take you until 10 p.m. at night of working on cases. But what do you think the biggest difference is between a solicitor and a barrister, just for those who are really unsure
I think
what route to take?
I think from a barrister's point of view, they do a hell of a lot of work outside of the office
Hmm.
of preparing cases because there's a lot more at stake and a lot more complex.
Yeah,
Whereas if you, as a solicitor, potentially we have picked up trials on a morning
yeah,
and prepared them and then done them that same day,
yeah,
that same morning. There's quite often in criminal law in a lot of firms where for some reason a date's been missed out with the diary and you think, oh God, I've got Joe Bloggs up for a trial today,
yeah.
and you've got to read it and do it within an hour. So I think from a
Right.
barrister's point of view, I think that there is a lot more case preparation to be done outside of the usual 9 to 5.
So for those who are kind of unsure on whether they want to be a barrister or solicitor, is that what you would say is the stark difference? You know, if you want to be a
Yeah,
barrister, be
I think so.
prepared to
Yeah,
put the work in.
but also, the other thing is from we're all in this job to earn money at the end of the day, and you as a solicitor, you've got a wage. As a barrister, um, you get paid by the case, but it can be more profitable being a barrister because you're working on your own. You're self-employed as such.
What are some of the best qualities you've seen in a barrister that has stuck with you and has made you like remember that barrister and that advocate?
Um,
And maybe some that you've even adopted yourself now that you are
I think
advocating.
as long as you can, there's a lot of barristers at very high levels, including Silk, who I think that lose a bit of touch with clients when they can't come down to their level. And that's not a criticism of them as such, because when you think about Teesside, where we're based, it's almost poverty stricken in areas. And if you have somebody who is very posh and can't speak to somebody from whichever town they're from who's a drug addict or whatever, then they lose a bit of confidence in them.
Of course.
So as long as you can come down to a level which is everybody understands what everybody's talking about, I think that's a massive, massive plus and a good trait to have, really.
And even in trial, like you've just said that, you know, your jury members are going to be from
Yeah,
probably the same area. Yeah,
from around here.
yeah, of course.
They're not professional jurors; they're normal people, and I would like to think that that's one of the things that quality that I have is that I'm from a normal a family,
Yeah,
working background. Mum and dad worked God knows how many hours to help me out and
yeah.
to look after us. Um, yeah, so I think if you can come down to a level which everybody can engage with, I think that's massive.
It's exactly the same perspective that I've got as well because like, I've came from a very normal background as well, first to go to university and when I was doing all of my minis in London, the
Yeah,
difference between the Southern Circuit to the Northeastern Circuit was crazy. You know, the barristers there.
yeah,
Not that there's anything wrong with them, I'm not criticising them, but it's just different life experiences. And the barristers in London are very different to the ones in Teesside.
yeah, yeah. I can imagine.
So in terms of your proudest moment in your career so far, what would you, other than being the first SILEX lawyer with high rates of audience in the criminal proceedings, but what else would you say is your biggest achievement
Sorry, it just broke up a little bit there. Biggest achievement.
in your career so far, other than becoming the first SILEX lawyer with high rates of audience in the criminal
Um,
proceedings?
biggest achievement. As in case wise, or
Yeah, case wise and also personal growth and development as well. Yeah, so definitely case wise first.
so case wise, I think the biggest one that I had was a guy who was acquitted of murder, which seemed impossible at one stage. Um, and my own personal case that I did was probably a young lad for a robbery where I didn't think he should be charged, let alone convicted. And he was fortunately he was acquitted.
Oh my God.
Um, yeah, those are probably my two standout cases I can think of.
Yeah. In terms of then how you deal with the setbacks of, not getting the result that you want, how do you deal with that? Because there are some cases where, and I know people say you can't get involved in the case, you can't be entwined in the case, you can't be personally affected by the case, but there's some cases where you are going to be affected by the case, especially if you've got any sort of emotion. So how do you sort of navigate that?
You've just got to get back on with it.
Yeah,
You've just got to, dust yourself off and start again. In effect,
yeah, of course.
there's nothing else you can do.
And especially when you've got the defendant's family, if they're involved in communication as well, it's quite difficult, isn't it, if you've got the pressure on and you've got people.
Yeah, of course it is. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's people's lives, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is.
So, in terms of, say, for example, you're going to cross-examine a complainant or a witness, and you've got your client is telling you, please say this to him or her, and you think that is just not a great idea at all, other than like taking your instructions, what can you actually, well, have you ever actually said, that's not a great idea, I'm not going to do that?
Um, you can only give them the advice if they want to do it. Then you tie to it, and you normally get something signed to the effect that this is the way they want the case to be conducted. But generally, they listen to what you've got to the advice you give them.
Okay, that's good then. That's that's really good. So, in terms of the relationship between maybe a paralegal and a solicitor, how important is that in terms of preparing a case as well?
How is paralegal and solicitor? How important are they?
Yeah, it's like enough in terms of their relationship, so their working relationship combined and what the
Yeah,
paralegal does.
yeah. It has to be. You have to get on because it's massive because without those people, you don't have it. It's a team. It's a team effort.
Of
At the end
course.
of the day, it's a massive team effort, and a lot of paralegal work goes unnoticed. Like taking up statements, like taking up proofs of evidence, um, site visits, taking photographs, preparing jury bundles. All of that is all about case prep as well. So
Yeah,
it's huge.
yeah, of course. And in terms of so like your day-to-day life now, because you have the high rights of audience, are you predominantly now in court?
Yeah. So I am in court every day.
Okay.
Or if there is nothing listed at court for me to do, I quite happily go to the police station and have a wander down there. And deal with whoever's at the police station. It makes no difference to me whatsoever because at the end of the day, all of the jobs need doing, and all of them lead up to potentially a case at the magistrates or the Crown Court.
Yeah, of course. How did it feel getting the wig?
Yeah, it's still a bit surreal, really.
Surreal. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's too hot.
Are they itchy?
Yeah, they are to a point. Yeah, yeah, they're
Oh,
right. I have to be honest, I always, as soon as I go into court, I don't have it on until there's a judge in, and then as soon as I get out of court, I take it off
straight away. Was it
straight
really,
away.
really strange seeing yourself with a wig on?
Yeah, it was surreal. Yeah, but
Yeah.
good, a good feeling, a really good
What
feeling.
amazing feeling. Like it's such a proud moment as well.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
So, of course, I'm training. I want to be a barrister. That's my heart's always been set on that. I'm in bar school at the moment, but there are so many friends of mine who are really torn between the barrister and the solicitor route that may be at, undergrad stage or postgrad if they're doing a master's. Would you say it's also important for them to get a couple of days' experience in a firm as well, if they can get their hands on that, to see both sides of the coin, or do you think
I
no?
mean, it's a tough one, really, because I suppose I think some counsel don't understand what work goes into preparing a case. So
For
I don't
sure.
think it's a bad thing.
No.
If someone who wants to be a barrister can go for a couple of days at a firm or a week at a firm, I think it stands you in good stead.
Yeah, absolutely. Because one of the biggest advices is, oh, go and get a paralegal role. But of course, getting a paralegal role within a firm, if you tell them that you're going to go to commence the bar course the year after, you're probably not really going to get hired.
Sorry, say that again, Ali. Sorry.
So say for example, like a lot of advice is for aspiring barristers to be able to obtain the pupillage, it's to get
Yeah,
the paralegal step
yeah,
because you've got the relationship with the
yeah.
solicitors then and you've also seen how a case works from the start to the finish. But of course that's really difficult because if you're going to commence the bar course the following year, you're probably not going to get hired. So I think to demonstrate that you've seen both sides of the coin, it's quite good to have a week in a firm or whatever if you can get that.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get into a firm, I don't see it can never be a bad thing.
No, it's more experience,
Of course it is, and experience is key.
of course.
And again, people will remember you that you were the pupil barrister who came on work experience or whatever and think, oh, actually, yeah, they were really switched on. Let's give them a try.
Yeah. Of course. And do you start, even when you're instructing, say, for example, it's a KC on a case now, say if they've got a pupil with them, do you observe the pupil as well and get to know them for the future?
I think that so one of a pupil that I've known, I'll name drop, there's Peter Makepeace, King's Counsel, who we instructed for years. He had a pupil way back in 2000 and crikey, it must be 2001 or two, called Richard Herman, who now is a very well respected senior junior, and I think that he said I'm his longest instructing solicitor. So I've known him from sort of day dot.
Starting out.
And he was always attentive and was always wanting to learn, and that stands you in great stead. So yeah, I suppose you don't look at them intently, but if you see them around and see what they're with, and he had a great pupil master in Mr. Makepeace, King's Counsel, and someone who I personally hold in very high regard.
Absolutely. And in terms of then, like your experience of going through the cases and things, do you start to kind of, because of course bundles are very content heavy, they can be very paper heavy as well if you've got 6,000 pages. But as a lawyer with so much experience, do you start to eventually sift out what's relevant and what isn't by kind
Yeah,
of default?
yeah, I think you can. I think you can sort of almost scan through things and pick out the bits that are because large chunks of a statement will be introductions,
Of
so you
course.
just you can just fly through that. And so yeah, I think that just comes in time really. I don't think you can teach that.
Yeah. So then, biggest advice from somebody for somebody who doesn't come from the traditional background of what may be expected at the bar or even in the solicitor's world, what would you say to them?
Biggest advice is listen to everybody around you. Sit in as many hearings as you can. Speak to as many people as you can, and don't be afraid to ask people's advice, because in the solicitor's room in the magistrates court, everybody bounces ideas off everybody because there's no right and wrong answer.
Yeah,
And if you are worried, and as I said, a while back, if you are worried about a client being worried about something, you could be worried about it for months. Well, ask somebody in the solicitor's room; they'll answer the question in a heartbeat. It might not be the answer you want, but at least you'll get an answer.
thank you very much. So, in terms of closing speeches, what are some of the most powerful qualities you've saw in and observed in a closing speech?
Um, don't go on too long. It's all about impact. Um, and and if your case is poor, you know, bang the drum about a certain point which is good, and keep banging it throughout the course of it. Because if that's all you've got, that's what you got to hang your hat on.
Yeah.
But you can lose people. You can get bored. People can get bored. And I think when I've done them in the magistrates court, it's a lot different to the Crown Court. But when you're doing the magistrates court, bring a little bit of theatre towards it.
Hmm.
Try and tie it in with a personal life experience, and I'm trying to think of something off the top of my head of a speech that I might have done. Um, you know, Try and tie it in with something. Well, there was one case where someone was quite specific about a knife. I can't remember the ins and outs of the thing, but they said it was a cheese knife that they'd
Right.
been attacked with, or something like that. So I said, well, they are very specific about this. It wasn't the bread knife. It wasn't the steak knife. It wasn't the butter knife. It was the butter. It wasn't the butter knife. It was the cheese knife. So how were they so specific about this cheese knife that they thought, hang on a sec, I don't want that one. I don't want that one. I don't want that one. I've got to reach for the cheese knife. It has to be the cheese knife, otherwise I can't attack this person. Or words to that effect. But it was
Yeah, of
it
course.
was sort of making a bit of a joke out of something. And if you
Yeah.
can sort of trying, it's all about, if in the magistrates court, it's all about cracking the magistrates and trying to get them to see that actually no, it might not be true what they're saying.
Yeah, of course. So, and then just final bit to touch on. So you've gave so many tips that, people have got an alternative route to becoming a solicitor. They don't have to do what CILEX, they don't have to do the traditional, it was the LPC, but it's now the SQE, isn't it?
SQ, yeah,
SQE. So they don't have to have, because I think that the financial burden of all of that is a massive,
yeah,
a massive bar. The same for the bar course. That
it
was
is,
I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship. Otherwise, I may not have been in this position because it's
yeah.
extremely expensive.
Okay.
So, but in terms of then just advice in general. if you can, I mean, even just going back to law school, like what would you tell law students now to be starting to do, maybe even in second year? Because I'll tell you something now, not a lot of universities are actually giving that correct advice and career support. So we are kind of just left out like stray dogs sometimes.
Well, there was when I first started, I think when I went to night school, there was something like 40 people in our class, and then by the time we got to fourth year, there was about nine.
Nine.
So stick at it because
Okay.
it's worth it.
Yeah. And then just final bit of advice for barristers who are in the first and the second six. What would you, pupil barristers, what would you say to them?
Again, stick at it because you're going to get a load of rubbish cases and a load of boring cases, and you're going to get tons and tons of them in magistrates court. But if you can get through that and are willing to not so much go the extra mile, but put the work in and
Oh.
sort of show willing, then you will be rewarded in due course.
And always remembering the humility side of things as well, don't lose
Absolutely,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, well, Nick, I can't thank you enough
no
for
problem at all.
47 minutes of your time. Thank you so, so much. So,
You're welcome.
I will pop this up on YouTube for everybody to watch. If you have any questions, I know that Nick does actually have a LinkedIn account. Nick, would you be happy for anybody to add you on that and ask you a couple of questions if they have
No problem at
any?
all.
If
No
that's
problem.
fine. So
Of
you're
course it
happy
is.
to connect with people.
Yeah,
Nick is open there for questions as well. And the law firm, if anybody in Teesside would like to maybe, see if they can try and get some experience, then the law firm, I'll pop the website underneath as well so that you guys can see what they do. Nick, thank you so much. I'm so
no
grateful for
problem.
having
You're
you.
welcome.
Oh, thank you
Anytime.
ever so much. I'll stop the recording. Thank you.